We are very pleased to have Jean Manford and her daughter Suzanne here today. This is something that we've looked forward to, that people have asked about, and we're very glad that she could come to be with us. Jean has been here before, but it was some years ago. And so for those of you who weren't with us in PFLAG at that time, this is a special treat, and we're looking forward to it. Jean was in New York a couple of 3 weeks ago at the gala there, celebrating 30 years of PFLAG. Theirs was the first chapter to meet, and PFLAG's taking advantage of that and creating celebrations around the country during this year. And that was the first one. And with that, I'd like to introduce Jean Manford to you and her daughter Suzanne. Ask Jean to tell her story, and Suzanne should feel, depending on the mother-daughter relationship, happy to interject.
I'm always happy.
Jean.
She's my right hand.
Good, excellent. Sounds like a wonderful thing.
Well, I don't know. I guess I start at the beginning, but I'm not quite sure when it all began. Morty, when he was 15, asked my husband and me if he could go to a psychologist, and we were really surprised. We couldn't understand why. His teachers always told me how wonderful he was. He became president of his GO in school, and the assistant principal said he thinks he's in my place, acting like assistant principal. And one teacher said, send him to the best college, he's going to be a senator someday. But my husband and I agreed if he felt he wanted to go, we said sure. And some time went by and we didn't think anything about it, and the psychologist called us in, and my husband and me, and told us that he was gay. Well, when Morty realized that we knew, he was furious. He was just so angry. I couldn't say good morning to him. He'd think I was saying something horrible. He was just so upset. And then I must have been in early 72 or late 71. He and a group of young gay men went to the Hilton Hotel where the Inner Circle met. They were a group of city officials, people who worked for New York City, and people were passing out leaflets complaining about the treatment the police were giving, and it seems that some of the men in the Inner Circle got up, and among them Michael May, who was head of the Firemen's Union, and he was also a Golden Gloves champion. He started to punch Morty and throw him down, kick him down the escalator. The police stood by and did nothing. Well, I was really upset. Morty ended up in the hospital, and I
saw a picture of him in the paper, and I didn't recognize him. He was severely beaten. He wasn't just hit.
And I sat down and I wrote a letter. First I tried to call the New York Times, and they wouldn't even talk to me. They hung up. I wanted to know why they didn't carry the story. And then I wrote a letter to the New York Post, and it was printed, and I complained about the incident that my son and other gay men were assaulted by these city officials. And it appeared in the paper, and the next day Morty called me and said, Mom, you can't imagine all the phone calls I'm getting, all the congratulations I'm getting, that a mother would advertise she had a gay son. Well, of course, after that, Morty and I were very close. And the following June, he asked me, it was 1972, he asked if I would march with him in it was then called the Christopher Street Parade. And I said, well, okay, but I'd like to carry a sign saying why I'm marching. It doesn't mean anything. So he wrote on a big piece of cardboard, Parents of Gays Unite in Support of Our Children. And I took the Long Island Railroad to Manhattan Penn Station, and then I had to take a subway to the Village where the parade started. And when I got on the train, it was pouring. The rain was coming down in buckets, but I got out of the subway. When I got on the railroad, it was pouring. When I got out of the subway, the sun was shining, and I'm walking along with a paper bag and boots and everything. And so people started yelling as I passed, just screaming and applauding. And at first I thought Dr. Spock was in back of us. He was marching with the veterans of Vietnam, and I thought they were applauding him. But then I realized, Modi said, "No, Mom," they kept asking me if I would call their parents. And so as we walked along, we talked about, well, how about getting, a group together and helping anybody who is, wants to come. And that was in June. And then the following March 11th, we had the first meeting, and Morty and Barbara Love, who was on that picture, she was supposed to take care of the women and Morty the men. And he put leaflets in all the bars and bookstores, and well, that first meeting there were probably 22 people there, some gay men, and we decided on meeting once a month. I think it was the first Sunday or the last, I don't remember now. And so that's how we started. And it took a long time. There were some meetings where just my husband Morty and I and the minister of the church who offered us the room free was there. And if one or two people came, we felt we did pretty well. And in September, and again in that picture is Sarah Montgomery, and she called me in September and she told me a sad story, how she had lost her son because he and his lover had lost their family and had lost their jobs, rather, I'm sorry. And she wondered if she could be any help. She told me she was 75 years old, and she didn't know if she could be any help. Well, she was marvelous. She spoke, and she was just a wonderful person, very helpful. And she joined in September, and gradually it began to build. The Ashworths joined, and the Benoffs, and the group got stronger.
People moved to other parts of the country and started other groups. And,
I think Betty Fairchild started one in Washington, D.C. I think she was the second one, but I'm not sure, because I was on television. My husband and I were at least 40 television shows. And so I was in one in Washington with Betty, and there was another woman there. She had been on a television show with her family called An American Family, and it turned out she had a gay son. And they had...
that was the Louds?
What?
The Louds.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, well, that was the beginning now. What else?
Well, just going on the television shows, people would come. Mom was a school teacher, and people would come over to you and thank you and know that if you said it was okay, because she was a great teacher and they loved her, and it was okay to be gay, it was okay to love your child. People would call all hours of the day or night. I was in college at the time, just to talk on the phone.
One of my students called me and said, well, if Mrs. Manford has a gay son, then I don't have to worry, I'm all right. And another, my husband was working in a clinic at the time, and one of the nurses came to him the day after a march and said, "Thank you, Dr. Manford." And so it got around.
The thing was that my mother was never afraid. She loved Morty. She was never afraid to say that she loved him. It didn't matter that he was gay. She was proud of who he was. He was always a great kid. He was always the leader of whatever he was involved with in his schools. And when she marched, he realized that she loved him, and he realized it didn't matter. We were used to watching, or he was used to watching his friends being beaten up and ostracized from their families. And people, I think Mom's biggest strength was that it didn't matter to her. She loved her child, as most people do, but the fact that he was gay or straight didn't matter. She loved him. And
well, a lot of the young people didn't even tell their parents because they were afraid. They didn't know what the reaction, and of course we found as the time went on that a lot of parents who came felt as I did. They just didn't know. A lot of them, of course, in those years, a lot of them came and cried and blamed the husband or blamed each other and threatened divorce, and we felt that we had helped a lot of people. And of course, you see it every day in your group.
the police would detain him and call. He was under 18 and he'd be in New York. Morty had been the leader of many of the early gay rights, the Gay Activist Alliance in Manhattan. There was the group that met in the firehouse. I'm not sure, there were several groups. He was always
He was president of the Gay Activists.
He was one of the founders and president. And people didn't talk about it at that time. And just the fact that she would talk about it, I think, helped people. People were able to come and talk to her. And as a teacher, she was gentle and accepting, and these are obviously, all of us are people who love our children, and some of our children happen to be gay, and it was okay. And that was the strength, I think, that my mother gave other people.
We never had a formal meeting when I started it. I usually opened the conversation and at some point and got people to talk. And there was no president or vice president. And one of the women, I think it was Edith Ogalski, passed around the hat at the end of the meeting. For years,
the first one to do that.
Yeah. For years we hadn't even collected any money. And then, I guess in the 80s, after I lost my husband, I was on television with Amy Ashworth and I think Ray Kameny. And as we were walking out, Amy said to me, "Don't you think a man ought to be in charge?" Well, I never be president. I never even thought about making it that formal. But I said, sure, and Dick Ashworth was elected president. And he and Amy went ahead and did a great job and I felt they really knew how to run an organization. I had no idea, how to make it grow or strong. Any questions?
I do. Jean, it's great to hear you.
I can't hear you.
It's great to hear you. It's great to hear your story. There's parts of it that I really didn't know, that Morty sort of really was a part of his draw that brought you actually to Christopher Street parade. I was curious, what was your feeling after that parade? When you were finished and all the hoopla was over, what were your feelings as you had marched with him?
Well, I was really elated. I mean, the people kissed me and hugged me, and I just felt, we had talked about starting something, and And as a matter of fact, I made the front page of the New York Times. They mentioned it that time.
They came to the house and interviewed her later. There's a beautiful picture, a big article. At that time, my daughter must have been about 3, and they quoted my dad as saying, for grandchildren, there was quality and not quantity was fine. But they came around. She appeared on a number of different TV programs, and they often had a foil, some homophobic foil. And one time where I was there was directly after Morty died. He died in '92 of AIDS. And I don't remember the man. Mom was on Geraldo. Geraldo. And there was some petty politician who was trying to make a name for himself, and I don't recall his name, but he attacked homosexuality in my mother and my newly dead brother. And the audience just about mobbed that man. They had to be restrained.
Yeah, they told him to shut up. He said, I was sitting in an airplane and I looked at the obituary and there was Morty. I said, shut up. I got up and yelled at him, don't you dare mention his name. And the audience said, kept it, be quiet, and Geraldo wouldn't let him talk.
That's great. Geraldo had his good points. Has his good points.
I wanted to follow up with another question, sort of as I come out, and my parents really benefited from PFLAG, and as they came into their own and came out about my being gay, and then have been with family and friends, they've had some losses because of their advocacy for me and for their support of gay people. And I wonder for you, if you were to think about where the loss has been in this journey, what comes to your mind?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
What kind of losses? Do you mean in terms of friends?
Friends or families, family?
I never lost a friend, and all of them were supportive. As a matter of fact, I have one friend, she was a kindergarten teacher in my school, and she became very close, very good friends. And as the years went on, I realized that her son was gay. And Morty told me he was, this young man, I said, where does your mother work? And he said, PS 32. And the young man says, where Sally works. And Morty said, is Nikki gay? And he said, yes, and so is his sister. Now, my friend had 2 gay children, and she never mentioned it to me. And when I was in New York, she's now...
Just this last week.
Yeah, she's 91 years old now. And I visited her, and she never, she never mentioned, well, she knew that I knew about Nikki, but she didn't know I knew about her daughter. And because I never said a word to her. So she said to me, well, you never told anyone about Nikki except one person. I said, if you mean Rose Marie, she's the one who told me about Maria. And she said, oh, I thought you told her. And it's the first time she really admitted to me that her daughter was gay. Now, she knew, that I was working, that I didn't mind being publicized, but she wouldn't tell me in all those years. Now, probably I've seen her for the last time, and she admitted it to me.
But friend or family would come over and tell us stories about experiences that they had growing up, homosexual experiences. These things had never been talked about before. And your principal, Mom appeared in the paper, or my parents appeared in the paper, and she came and warned you about it? Or?
Yeah, it was on the front page of the Times again, one of the marches, and she said, parents are going to complain about this. And I looked at her and said, my professional life is one thing, and my private life is another. She never said another word.
Did the parents ever complain?
Speak up.
I have trouble.
Did the parents ever complain?
No, not that I know of. In fact, one little boy said to me, "My mother knows about you." I had been on television. That's about all I heard from the children.
We lived in a conservative neighborhood, and we did have, there were a lot of children on the block who were from, not from the public schools, but from the local parochial schools. And they threw rocks, and we also had...
Once or twice, yeah.
And we also had things like Jew written on the front during a Christmas thing. There were those kinds of incidences, but it was never family or friends. There were good people, my friends as well. If I lost a friend, I never noticed it. It wasn't worth it. But my mother has good friends, and if anything, it was stronger. It's never a problem.
I think many of us have a similar experience, that our friends that we come out to are they don't mention that they find this objectionable or a problem. And they do ask, after our children, at least in my experience. But there might be some cooling, you just never know. In other words, I don't know if I've lost a friend. It hasn't been that obvious.
I never noticed it. In fact, I lived half a block from the school, so I would bring some of the teachers at lunchtime. I'd bring one at a time home and have lunch with them and talk about it. And they never... As a matter of fact, I was asked to speak in Washington at a Senate subcommittee, and I was going to make a speech, and also they asked me to sign some bill, have a petition signed. Some friend took it away from me and said, "I'll get it signed for you," and she got most of the teachers in the school to sign it.
Wonder.
So I never did have a bad experience with friends.
That's great. How has it been for you, Suzanne, as the daughter of a mother who's been out there marching in New York streets and organizing in an area that isn't, or wasn't certainly, a popular cause at the time?
I, growing up, really wasn't aware of homosexuality. I had no idea that my brother was. I lived in New York City. There were a lot of people that were different, lots of races. I never thought about it. And when I found out that my brother was gay, I was surprised. He wasn't what I thought was the stereotype of what a gay person was. And when my mother marched, I loved Morty. He was a terrific guy. I didn't always agree with him in the things he said and he did, but he was a great person, and he did his best. And I ended up marching. I had a great time. I have some pictures of myself. My daughter at 3 and 4 years old carried signs in the marches.
She said, "My uncle is great, but is gay, but I would love him any slash way." I would say my uncle is gay, but I would love him.
2468. I'd love him even if he was straight. But this was a 4 and 5 year old, and she spoke about it. He of course sat and talked to her about politics, and we were in Vietnam at the time, and she'd be this little kid in the grocery store, and people would be talking about Nixon, or in nursery school, the teacher says how she asked the children if she knew who was the president, and she'd get answers like, "Yes, he's the father of our country and he loves us." And Avril would raise her hand and said, "And he bombs babies." And people aren't allowed to love each other. Morty would talk to her about, and we all would. You're allowed to hurt people, but you're not allowed to love people.
And she
So
just became a doctor. She graduated, finished her residency, and she's in practice now.
And she has 2 little girls who have friends who have 2 mommies or 2 daddies. It's growing up with it for her was perfectly normal. For me, it was a surprise, but I loved my brother, and I did everything I could to support him. And for part of that time, I was in college, and when I came home, I enjoyed the marches. I thought they were great. I never marched in a parade until I did that, and that was great. Morty was a good guy.
In one parade, I was walking with Morty, and a friend of his came, Arthur Bell, and they started talking, and a policeman came over to us and said, "Move on, don't stand here." And I stood and I thought to myself, the nerve of him. I opened my eyes and looked at him.
Like he was a 5th grader.
And he turned away and walked
reacted
away.
like a 5th
I
grader.
thought to myself, I'm a citizen, what right has he got to tell me to move? And once I think we were picketing something about during the Carter when he was running for president, and a man started arguing and yelling at Morty. My husband had just had a stroke and he had a cane, and he went over to the man like this with the cane over his head. The guy luckily moved away and there was no incidents.
Morty was very active in the early gay movement in New York, or not the gay movement when, particularly after Stonewall. I guess it wasn't the early gay, but he was a very non-violent protester, but he was adamant.
He was at Stonewall. This gentleman would like to speak.
I hope you realize that all over the United States there are thousands and thousands of people, of which I'm one, for which PFLAG is our family. It's the only one we have. We've been rejected. This is where we're accepted.